everyone, my name is Angie and we will be presenting joy in Hispanic/Latino communities.
I'm Katherine.
And I'm Emelyn.
And this is just our agenda and our overview of what we will be talking about.
Yeah, so first we're just going to go over a brief introduction. We're going to go over some background. We have 3 main points: gender, age, religion, and societal values. In terms of our methodology, we did a couple of interviews instead of surveys. Then we're going to be going over why we did our methodology. We're going to be sharing some of our personal perspectives and then what we learned and what we're looking forward to. Okay, so our research question was, what factors contribute to joy in Hispanic communities? And then, why does this matter? So why did we decide to do this research? All 3 of us are from different Hispanic identities, and before we start this presentation as well, I just want to acknowledge that Hispanic is an umbrella term used to encompass a lot of Latino and Latina identities in the United States, and it was created by the United States government in the 1900s. So we do want to acknowledge that even us, the 3 of us, we do share different Hispanic identities. So we're just going to be using it as a general term in this study, but we do want to acknowledge that there are differences in terms of cultural traditions among different Hispanic communities. So why this research matters, I summarized this into 4 different points. 1, joy is a form of cultural resistance in marginalized communities. So not just Hispanic communities, but marginalized communities in the U.S. Being joyful is a way to resist oppressive powers. And it's just a way of saying, like, hey, I'm here, and just gear away from any negative stereotypes. And this shifts into number 2, shifts a negative narrative. So instead of what's typically revolved around Hispanic stereotypes or what could be portrayed in Hispanic media, a research study in joy could shift that negative narrative and put more light on cultural traditions in Hispanic communities that are more positive and seeing Hispanics in a more positive sense. 3, intergenerational insight. Studying joy in Hispanic communities helps us share how different traditions are shared across generations of families. And then 4, community-centered understanding. It's just a way to help us understand how Hispanic communities really do interact with each other. So for example, why would reading an article like this benefit you if it were actually to be published in the articles that we read? If you are in a people-facing position in your future, and whether that be your career, if you do read articles like this, it could just help you understand how to interact with Hispanic communities more.
And for the background overview, how individuals view joy is shaped by their own unique experiences and identities. So delving into Hispanic identities highlights how race and ethnicity connects to how you find joy, whether you're subconscious to it or not. And when we're examining Hispanic communities, identifiable factors contribute to achieving joy. So what are these identifications and why?
So this was our hypothesis that we generalized based on our own personal experiences and understanding of what joy is. So in Hispanic communities, joy is most strongly shaped by 1, family relationships, 2, cultural traditions, and 3, religious practices. And we, again, came up with this understanding of what joy is to us and how we perceive joy based on our personal lived experiences.
And now moving on to gender and age, which is what we specifically wanted to look at. Moving to the next slide.
You have to press up there.
Okay, so I found an interesting article from Pew Research, which is life satisfaction among Latinas. But in this article, it didn't only look at Latinas, it looked at Latinos too. And so I think it's very important to see the statistics and data and to be able to really visualize it. But for Latinas, 56 are very satisfied with life, but only 1 in 5 are satisfied with their finances. And I think that is a big gap. In terms of sources of joy and what the article found is that for family and friends, 78% of Latina find joy in that, but 71% of Latino men find joy in source and family and friends. So the gap isn't too large. It's pretty similar. In terms of spirituality, 47% of Latinas versus 35% of men say spirituality and religious practices bring them joy. And then when we look at different kind of comparisons, Latinas are more likely than men to find joy in creating, experiencing art, whereas Latinos are significantly say that sports and exercise bring them joy. And so within Latinas who are, if we look specifically to Latinas, who do they report more joy? I think this was really interesting to see that immigrant, older, more conservative, and married Latinas are more likely to say that they are very happy and satisfied with their family life. And then for college-educated Latinas, they are more likely to find joy in travel, outdoor activities, the arts, their job, exercise, than Latinas with high school diplomas or less. And I didn't put it in here, but the gaps are really, really large, specifically when we're looking at what they find joy specifically in Latinas. I think the number was about 75%, and then for college level Latinas, and then it was like 35% for non-college level Latinas. So I feel like that is a very large gap that needs to be recognized.
So now we're going to be moving on to our second point, so religion as a source of identity, coping, and community. So I think this quote really encompasses a lot of what the religion section is going to be about. This quote is from a research study that was on a faith-based Hispanic community that was conducted to see correlation between well-being in U.S. Hispanic Latinos in a church-based institution. And so I'll just go ahead and read it over really quick. It is important to have faith because if we have no faith and hope, then we are nothing, because I have been through very hard, very difficult matters, and I believe that God has been great to me. So you can see that this participant is acknowledging that they've experienced a lot of hardships, but they acknowledge that if they have faith and hope in their life, that they will be good. So it's a sense of like perspective that religion is able to offer you. And I know on Tuesday, a lot of presentations were touching on that. I remember it was Josh's team as well. So I won't get too much into the details. So a little overview. So studies indicate that 72.6% of Hispanics living in the U.S. are Catholic and 64% attend church regularly. This doesn't encompass the whole Hispanic community and the other religions that they do participate in as well. So in research, I found out that Hispanic families have deep faith in God, and their faith in God is strong and constant. So even if Hispanics aren't necessarily familiar with their Bible, what the Bible actually says, and practicing religion on a really deep level, you could see in the everyday practices that they end up acknowledging God. And a great example of that a lot of articles were touching upon is like when a Hispanic greets you for a sentence in Spanish, they always say words like, oh, thank God, I'm well. Things like that are really intertwined into our culture. And the quinceañera is also a celebration of life and gratitude to God on the 15th birthday of a young girl. So I put two images on the bottom. It was my quinceañera, and then at the top, most recently, this past September, was my sister's quinceañera. And I thought of a quinceañera as more of like a cultural thing and not necessarily a religious practice. So this was also something that was very interesting to me, that it was really rooted in religion. And then I also did want to acknowledge that different religious movements are political as well, and so religion in that sense is a form of political resistance, as I was mentioning earlier. So to summarize this section really quick in 4 main points, religion provides meaning in life. It provides people with a different perspective to look at things that's very optimistic, comfort and emotional support. Because of that very optimistic point of view, you're able to really regulate your emotions and not necessarily take a negative experience as something that's going to tear you down. Community and belonging, it provides a sense of community for Hispanic individuals where they can go and find people that speak the same language as them or look like them, so they are not isolated. In an article I was reading as well, it was talking about when migrants come to the U.S. and they often feel isolated, a church community is something that they tend to look for so they don't feel as lonely. And then tools to reinterpret stress in positive ways. Because of that optimistic look, again, they're able to cope with emotions more healthy. And then this again is just another quote from a different participant. So religion is not just spiritual, but it's also a positive outlook in life. It's intertwined into our culture, whether that's subconscious and not necessarily intentional. It is a form of political resistance, and it is a value that you ultimately learn growing up.
And for societal values, the values that are within Hispanic culture are compassion or companionship, optimism, and generosity. And for companionship, Hispanic families tend to live together longer than most other families. For example, when a child reaches adulthood, it's not unusual for them to continue living in the household. So because of this, they usually have they're usually living longer with their family and also their community. So then these companionships last longer and create stronger relationships, which has meaning and brings them joy due to the closeness they have with their family and also the people around them. And familial relationships are promoted across all age groups, as children, parents, aunts and uncles and grandparents have a significant presence in each other's lives, which also shows the cultivation and nurturing for relationships. And there's emphasis on companionship that makes Hispanics feel joy because they feel more emotional support in their lives. They can be more expressive and they can value themselves and others. And for optimism, 9 of the top 10 happiest countries are low to middle income, and most of these are Spanish speaking, suggesting that these nations report high levels of positive emotions despite poverty, crime, and natural disasters. And even so, there's such a high report of joy-related feelings. This is because people continue to stay optimistic and uplift themselves and others through cultures and traditions. It creates a sense of like collective healing, and it's a way to override all these negative feelings that they have with joyful ones. And generosity, because of the emphasis on culture and community, we see this openness making hospitality as societal values, making the overall emphasis on generosity often associated with joy, such as the phrase "mi casa es su casa" is one of the most popular Spanish expressions. It shows how Hispanic cultures emphasize the importance of positive experiences of shared space, as it gives them the ability to give and also receive joy.
I think it's frozen.
I think you just have to press it really hard.
Okay, so now we're just gonna share a quick video that has some of our interview findings. So you'll hear audio clips of our interviewees, and then it also just encompasses a lot of the background information we just shared with y'all.
The way that I express joy is more like vibrant, like more outgoing, and more. I don't think you can feel right now through this audio, but I'm just always happy. I heard it has played like a huge role in like how I express the joy that I have. It's just like as a Hispanic, our emotions are just really, really strong.
For me, joy is to give back, to show people, to educate people.
I would define joy as having a feeling of authenticity, pride, and genuine happiness where stress and pressure disappear. And for me, that shows up most when I'm with family, friends, loved ones, when I accomplish something meaningful.
I mean, by those who love me, the ones that I love, I define it as a moment where I feel like happy. I see this moment as super sunny, even if it's cloudy outside.
A cultural tradition and practice that I enjoy would be spending Christmas with my family and connecting with them.
A practice I enjoy could be dándole la bendición to people, like, just blessing them all. It's something that I was taught since an early age.
We do rosarios, we do posadas for Christmas, and with that money that we collect, we go to Ecuador and we give out to people in need.
Over time, I came to find joy in things that happen to be more stressful, that are more painful, because those things are things to be joyful about too. I came to understand that pressure is privilege, and whenever something difficult, you should still look for joy and happiness in those things.
With your mind that you're going to succeed, or you have something in your mind, then you can accomplish that. Always with faith and positive attitude.
Joy is not only laughter or smiles, it's peace, honesty with yourself, and appreciation of little things.
Anyways, I hope those were good answers.
In terms of our methods that we use in our research, so for our primary source, we decided to do interviews where we asked 3 people from a couple of different backgrounds, and we asked 9 open-ended questions where we also asked them if they could record their answers in audio so that it'd be easier for us to actually analyze and take down what they said. What we asked them about in general, we asked them how they define joy, joyful memories and practices, cultural traditions and sentimental objects, how family, community, and background shape their joy, how their ideas of joy has changed, and if they have any advice for people. Why we chose this approach is we wanted to let people to have the opportunity to share their stories and their feelings in their own words, and in terms of secondary sources, we use research and class discussions to kind of get our thinking going, and we compared these ideas to what we learned in our interviews. And then for our interview findings in general, these are some key findings. Based on our interviews, we found that joy is deeply rooted in relationship, culture, and everyday moments. Participants most often describe family, culture, and faith as their main source of joy. These examples included spending time with loved ones, celebrating traditions like Dia de los Muertos or Christmas, visiting Ecuador or their home countries, and then keeping meaningful religious symbols such as a bracelet with a cross. So overall, joy was described as small, meaningful moments of connection, gratitude, and pride in their relationships or cultures. And then for our perspective, we wanted to give a little bit of how we define joy. And so I feel like for me, joy has always evolved over time, but now a lot of my happiness and joy comes from culture, family, religion, and job. And just to give a little bit of background, I'm Honduran. I was born and raised in Long Island, but that is where my parents identify, so I identify as Honduran American. And then in terms of food, if you're not familiar with Hondurans, we love baleadas, and that is what we're known for, and also pollo con tajadas. So if you haven't tried it, I suggest you do. In terms of dance, we are known for punta, which is an Afro-Latino kind of dance, and then we're also known for sopa de caracol, if you've never heard that song, but that is originally from Honduras. And then in terms of family, most of my joy comes from my family. In this photo, this is my family, my mom, my dad, and my sister. And then I grew up Catholic, so a lot of my joy that I use, especially with religion, is always deeply rooted in being Catholic. And then for school and job, I'm an MCC major, and that's something that I'm immensely passionate about. And I'm also an NYU Opportunities Program, which I work as an ambassador, connecting students, connecting people of color. And then also I worked as a data analyst doing the same exact mission.
Very quickly on my perspective, I feel like my perspective on joy comes a lot from my religion. I identify as a Baptist Christian, and I used to be Catholic, but I feel like religion really helps me shape my perspective and joy into turning very low moments in life into moments that could be very positive. And then this is just a little bit about me. I come from a Guatemalan background, and I grew up in New York.
So for me, I identify joy as prolonged state of bliss and satisfaction with yourself, others, and your environment. And a big part of that is shaped by my Hispanic identity. And part I want to touch on is just like a tradition my family and I have, is that every Sunday we're meant to be with the family. And it's not just like for a period of time or just for like a meal. We spend the entire day together. And as I grew up more and I took more responsibilities, I began to like have this within me all the time. And it's something I look forward to. And this is a little bit about me, and so yeah, I'm Ecuadorian. I am from Long Island. My favorite food is humitas and fritada, and we have like this really fun tradition called Carnaval, which is just like a huge like water food fight in February, and it's super fun. And I'm a TNL major, and my job is like writing.
I guess we can just quickly touch on
Take
it.
your time.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
We've got a few minutes, so don't. I think give them a little bit longer.
Yeah, we only have this is our last slide basically. But what I found most interesting to see is again the biggest differences, like the 75% in college level Latinas versus the college educated Latinas being 35%, and so I feel like that gap is super huge. And so that was kind of interesting to see how their sources of joy can vary depending on where you're born or what kind of background you come from. And then I wasn't really surprised with my findings in terms of the values that we brought, because a lot of it already resonated in my own life. So I wasn't really surprised with like religion being involved or gender or cultural being a big source of happiness for me.
So in terms of what I learned that a lot of cultural traditions have religious ties, even if the original meaning now has become a little foggy. And I think the example that most stood out to me was the quinceañera. Overall, though, I wasn't that surprised of my findings, because I feel like a lot of what we were reading about in these research articles, and also like interviewing a couple people, were a lot of the same practices and values that we were raised on.
What I learned is that Hispanic people's joy is strengthened during times of hardship, and the importance of companionship and tradition, which brings laughter and celebration, helps overcome struggles such as like poverty, discrimination, and also migration. And I'm also surprised, but also not at the same time, because I've also been taught these values of being strong through hardships, but I did not see the connection that like celebrations and like traditions that I've grown up with are actually like kind of coping tools to help us stay joyful during times of struggle.
And then just looking forward, I think it would have been also good to take the opportunity to use different kind of research methods for our primary sources. Like a lot of our peers have done short surveys, so I think we could have also done that for primary data. I also think interviewing more people, expanding beyond our network and interviewing people across all ages, because a lot of the people that we interviewed were around our age, and so it'd be interesting to also look into how other people interpret joy, specifically Hispanic communities, and then including more diverse countries, as well as Emelyn already brought this up earlier, but Hispanic is a broad term and there are big differences between regions. And I think this also is a great opportunity to compare across generations, so US borns versus native borns, and how they interpret joy.
And these are our references.